Hello, I'm Paul Gates. Welcome to this week's episode of The Academics. Joining me today are our regular panelists, Professor Heather Page Preston and Dr. Dave Spiceland. Today we're going to be discussing the topic of sustainability, which is a pretty broad topic. What is sustainability? What are the differences between large and small scale sustainability? We'll talk about Appalachian's campus efforts and life after studying in the program here at Appalachian State University. To start off, let's try to define sustainability.
Oh, there's a pretty general definition of it, that it's ways of thinking or acting or being that meet present needs without impinging on future generations' abilities to meet their own needs. So that's a really broad definition.
So we're talking about renewability in a lot of ways, or at least wise use of perhaps limited resources. Everything is limited. I guess water isn't, although it's maybe not in the right places all the time. But
it is here.
It is here today.
Yeah.
Definitely.
That's true. But there is a finite amount of water, just like there's a finite amount of everything. Water just happens to be able to recycle itself in various ways. But moving it around, getting it to the right places when people need it is kind of the trick.
Yeah, it is conservation of resources, protection of resources, not overusing them, abusing them, but it's also, people are included in that. So there's a social justice component to sustainability, the way that it's talked about as well. So the environment, economic sustainability, what is sustainable long-term for economics worldwide, and also people themselves. Yeah.
Dave, you got something to add there?
Well, energy production is part of this whole rubric.
Sure.
I was in California a couple of weeks ago, and I was driving near Palm Springs. I have never seen as many windmills, and these are big windmills, bigger than our windmill here on campus, and they were just everywhere on both sides of the road and whatever, ostensibly to produce energy. One of the things about, if you're talking about energy production or sustainability in a broad sense, is every kind of energy production has a problem with it. For instance, with windmills, people were, and still are, very keen on windmills, but birds fly into them. And there were some people that said, well, we shouldn't have windmills because birds fly into them. So anything you have, there's going to be a negative component to it in some way. And so it's a balance. Can you live with the good and the bad?
Yeah, that's true. Balance is very much a part of it. And in terms of the windmill, there are a number of windmills where birds don't fly into them, and they're trying to work on siting windmills in places that don't interfere with the migration of birds, bats as well.
And part of the effort is, of course, mitigating the bad effects of production, whatever it is. Whether it's design better coal ash ponds. We've had some unfortunate experiences with that here in North Carolina in the last couple of years, of Duke Energy dumping a lot of coal ash into a river that comes down from Virginia. And or does it flow the other way? Does it go north from here?
Are we talking about the new?
No, it's not the new. It's a different one.
It probably flows south then.
But okay, then it's south. The new is the northbound one, huh?
Yeah.
And what can we, better linings, better construction of coal ash ponds. That's part of it. How do we address the bird thing?
But that's not really the coal ash is a different subject. That's not considered sustainable. You're mining a natural resource at a rate that you can't sustain. And the negative ramifications are coal ash, pollution in the air. There are all sorts of bad things that happen with that. And sustainability is more looking toward ways that don't produce the same pollution, whether it is in the air or in the water, and also doesn't create a different type of pollution. And there are problems with it because right now there aren't enough regulations for solar panel production to make sure that they're done consistently to a certain standard. But there is a ranking system, so you can get the ones that are best for the environment. Same thing with electric batteries and electric cars. Where are they most useful? Electric cars are not useful here in the mountains of North Carolina. They're very useful in cities. Very, very useful.
For short-term,
Yeah.
short rides.
Yeah,
Sure.
and then what do you do with the batteries? How long do they last? Can you recycle those?
But
Yeah.
what about talking about solar power? What happened where a lot of these solar panel or just solar projects went bankrupt? What was the deal with that?
Well, part of the problem was that the Chinese were subsidizing production heavily. In fact, China makes, I haven't seen a recent figure, but they make by far the majority of the solar panels in the world, and are really pushing that that production source, and are leading the world in that right now. And we've had a hard time competing on price because of the
Oh, we always do with the Chinese.
those subsidies that the government is. It's not just low wages. It's the subsidies that the government is providing to the producers. But they've got a real serious coal problem, air pollution, and exacerbating the sandstorms that they have blowing in from the west, and so they're really dedicated to do that. I mean, they see that as a threat to the government. If you kill too many more people with air pollution, we always see them going around with masks all the time in the big cities. That threatens the stability of the government, and they recognize that. They recognize a serious problem that they have to address.
And there's precedent for that as well. In the 1950s, the big coal fog that descended upon London and killed numerous people. And the first people to notice there was a problem, it wasn't the scientists, it wasn't the government, it was the undertakers. They saw a huge spike in the number of deaths when the fog descended and stayed for 3 days. Yeah.
Killed people that quickly?
Oh, yes it did. Yes it did.
Wow.
The elderly people, anybody with breathing issues, infants, yeah.
Well, of course, any of these, now we mentioned coal again for about the second or third time here, it's a finite resource anyway. And so, we've got to be ready for when we don't have it anymore. It's kind of the same with oil. And gas has been able to be tapped because we have new extraction techniques. But, as we've been saying before, those have negative effects too. Of course,
absolutely.
earthquakes.
Yeah.
Well,
Oklahoma
that hasn't been proven.
Well,
but-
Oklahoma's, the number of earthquakes in Oklahoma has just taken off.
Exponentially.
I know,
in the
but
last couple of
is there a
years.
Since
cause and
fracking,
effect?
well, they didn't happen before fracking and they've happened after fracking.
Well,
Yeah.
still, that's up in the air.
No, they're in the hundreds now, the numbers of earthquakes
Yes.
that they have a year in Oklahoma. And it used to be 3 or 4. And now it really is, no exaggeration, in the hundreds.
It's not happening just in
So-
Oklahoma, it's happening everywhere there's fracking.
And of course,
Yeah.
but Oklahoma may be particularly susceptible. Whatever geological structure they have might make the situation worse.
Yeah, absolutely. And even if if we step away from whether or not it's been proven, there is a very serious issue that we use way more resources than we should. As a country that makes up 5% of the world's population, we use 30% of the
When you
resources
say
for any
should,
given.
I mean, who decides what we should?
Well, that's just it. Here's the thing. The population is predicted to be about 9 billion by the year 2050, almost
Worldwide.
9 billion worldwide population. If only half of the people in the developing countries start to consume at the rate that we consume, the planet will implode. There will be no planet left to
No,
mine.
not everybody agrees with that, though.
There's a whole lot of people who want to consume to have the same standard of living that we do.
And what brings that about? Capitalism.
Capitalism.
Yeah.
And we can talk about that and whether or not that's sustainable,
Well,
because economic is part of the discussion.
So what do? Socialism, communism, let the government decide, or what's the best resource there?
Well, there are
Who decides? Who makes the decisions?
It
Good
depends how long you let it go. Now it would probably be some sort of government decision. I mean, we're seeing now that states are deciding on their own to embrace various forms of renewables and sustainable practices. If it gets really bad at some point, people are going to decide that we just can't do this anymore. If people start dying of pollution and things like that, you'll see the changes come about because they're forced by circumstance, not by foresight, which I'd rather see the foresight.
Yeah, yeah, I would as well.
Rather than start having another hurricane season like we've just been through. We don't want those every 2 or 3 years. Once every 10, which is what we're getting now, is bad enough. But if we continue along like this, we can't keep building on the coasts. And there's a tremendous problem with that. The government subsidizes flood insurance, and there have been about 30,000 property owners who have rebuilt, get this, more than 4 times after being flooded.
Which is very close to our hearts right now, being in a floodplain.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask a question though. Has sustainability become a buzzword? If you have a proposal to put through and you want the government to fund something, and you use the term sustainable, or the millennials are really big on sustainability, and it gets back to the definition. What does that really mean? And I'm not saying that sustainable living is not a good idea, but what does it mean? And I would posit that a lot of people, especially our young people, no offense, don't really know what sustainability really is.
Well, I don't know. I think I would push back a little bit on that.
It has a lot of different meanings depending what you're talking about.
That's my point.
Yeah. You got to pick your topic first, and then design your sustainability discussion around that. Sure, that's right. Yeah. Well, let's look at some of the things we're doing here on campus for
This building. We have something to wear the I forget what they call it.
LEED certification.
Yeah, but underground there's the rain that we're having right now is filling up these. I'm trying to think of the
Cistern?
words. A cistern. That's it. Yeah. So there's those kind of things that this building was built with something like that.
Is that the gray water usage for
Yeah, they have
toilets
these signs that say non-potable water
Yes,
over the
yeah.
toilet. It's like, boy, I was wanting to get a drink out of the toilet, but it's non.
This.
And by the way, I was not.
legal
but-
requires that.
Yeah.
That's the idea of cisterns is to supply the building with its non-drinking water needs, and that's not a new concept. I mean, cisterns are ancient technology, and in a lot of islands in the Caribbean, you've seen pretty postcard pictures of in Bermuda. All the roofs are stepped and they're whitewashed, and every homeowner does the same thing. They collect all their rainwater and use it to flush the toilet.
In England, there are a lot of houses that are built that way to collect the rainwater. Yeah, I lived in a house in Athens, Ohio, that had a cistern.
So it's an old technology, and water again is pretty easy to reuse.
Well, and the good folks in the West, where there's not much rain, there's a lot of problems with water generation, those kind of things, and trying to conserve that resource.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and lately in California, it's gone up and down, and drought one year, well, a long stretch of drought. Then they had a record snowfall in the Sierras. That seemed to mitigate the surface water needs for a while.
But a lot of it was put into the ocean because they didn't have a way to hold on to it. One of the
It was too much.
criticisms in California has been that there hasn't, I'm not saying this is true, but the criticism was there's not enough lakes that are being built. Everybody wants a lake, but nobody wants in their backyard. It's like people, they want these jails, prisons, but they don't want one in their backyard. So it's a problem.
The NIMBY factor, sure.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, part of sustainability is new construction. I mean, I think we're seeing that in California this fall. There's been lots of serious wildfires. I guess the Napa fire is up to over 6,000 buildings destroyed.
7,000 was
Is it up to
what I saw
40
today.
killed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, a lot of that is because they're building in places that are remote, inaccessible, prone to fire. And then you add on the weather problems that they've got. The upslope, which drives flames in a different way than on other conditions. And so that creates its own problem. So, everybody would like to live, in the mountains and have a nice view and a little dirt road out in the back country, but there's a line there.
Well, I won't tell you where I live, but I thought, okay, I won't be flooded unless Noah's flood returns. I'm not going to have, so I sort of think about the things that could happen. But wildfires, and that is a real danger at times in the high country.
Sure. Oh, yeah. Yeah, we get warnings all the time, orange, and we live near national forests, and they always have warnings out all the time. They monitor it very, very carefully.
Yeah.
Let's back to the university. What are we doing on campus for this? What kinds of
We're doing all sorts of things on campus. So obviously there's a sustainability program on campus for the university in the widest sense, but there are also courses in sustainability. In a wider sense, we have the solar vehicle team, which has created a race car that's solar powered and has taken it around the world now and competed, and it just
competed
placed.
very successfully.
Yes,
I
it
might
just placed. I'm trying to remember what they placed.
Was it number 2?
It was either 2 or 3
Yeah,
in
very close.
in a recent competition. That's an incredible program that takes majors from across the university. All you have to do is express interest, and you get a job. So communication, engineering, however you think about it, science, they can find a place for you to help you do this. It's a hands-on lab. And then there are university efforts for recycling, power conservation. There also is a push to source as much food locally as possible, which contributes to the local economy and also keeps the money not just local in the sense that it goes to a local business, but it doesn't go to pay the overhead for large corporations or the big agriculture in the U.S.
Address the environmental aspect of
Oh,
that.
absolutely,
Local
yeah.
food.
It's organic. It's
Right.
it's a connection with the history of the area, and it's also a really neat thing to be able to sit down and eat in a dining hall and say, oh, okay, this came from a local farmer that you can meet and talk to and get a connection with nature. And a lot of what we're seeing with these problems of overbuilding in places, people not understanding the power of nature, is a disconnect with nature. And we've lost that somewhere along the way.
What I was thinking about environmentally is, if the food is brought in, from a farm in Nash County,
Oh, yeah.
12, 15 miles away,
Yeah.
it's not coming from California.
It's fresh.
It's fresh.
It's
better.
not pulling the water
but it's-
source from California.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's not using the fuel to
That's
transport
true.
it from.
That's
from
true. So the
California.
carbon footprint of the food is
I
much less.
always think of, this is years ago before anybody knew about sustainability. When I was working in Boston, one day I was walking down the street, and it was a winter day, it was in February, snow drifts everywhere. And I walked by this little food store, and they had peaches from New Zealand in the window. I thought, wow, that's really great, and that you can actually do this, that it's possible. And I bought a peach. It cost me 50 cents. This would have been about 1973, maybe. And that was some money then, 50
Yeah,
cents.
so
Hey,
that's an expensive peach.
that was lunch. And but I've since come to think about that and think, well, is that a responsible thing to do? Probably not.
No.
In fact,
Right,
it
for
is
you
not.
to eat it or to bring it in?
Well, to encourage that kind of commerce.
But where would you get a peach in the
Well, that's it.
wintertime anyway?
You should eat seasonally.
Yeah,
Eat
there
what-
were seasonal foods before.
eat
There
what's- eat
should be
what's
seasonal
available
foods
at the
again.
time.
We're all about convenience
Nothing's
now.
going to happen to us if we
Yeah.
forego peaches until they grow in Georgia and South Carolina. We're going to be fine until, I don't even know when peach season is, but
Oh, I do. They're one of my favorites.
we're gonna-
so,
well,
yeah.
but
June.
yeah, it's of course, people always have eaten seasonally. I mean, that's the way.
Yes.
There was no choice. That's the thing.
We want choice. We want convenience. We want prepackaged stuff. We don't want to cook. All these things have terrible, terrible ramifications.
Yeah.
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 So we also don't want to limit what we can do personally. And the studies show that the people who have the least impact are the ones who feel guiltiest about all of this. And we feel unempowered. Disempowered, unempowered. Yeah, we don't feel like we have any power to correct what's going on, but you do. Every individual does. And, avalanches start with individual snowflakes, so you get a push. And in terms of going from large scale to small scale, You can do things like recycling. You can turn off the faucet while you brush your teeth. There are small decisions you can make that make a huge impact.
It just takes a little forethought, is that. You have to just plan a little bit, think a little bit, and maybe go out of your way a little bit.
Yeah.
But anything else on campus going on? The windmill.
The windmill, yeah, which I forget about until I see it when I'm driving home.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
We had this windmill up behind us years ago, before I came here in '92. And apparently it caused problems with, supposedly, with people saying it interfered with their TV viewing or whatever, so they took it down.
Yeah.
What I would like to see is more transparency or explanation when they say, well, this windmill can power X number of homes. I'd like to see, you know, whose home got the power from it, those kind of things.
Yeah. Well, that's going to be about our time. We're going to have to
Are
close
you
out the show
serious?
this week.
Are
Yeah,
we
that
done
went
already?
It goes quickly every week. So to close up, we're going to go to Heather Preston, who's going to give us a fun fact about the history of the high country.
Okay. So we've got this Howard's Knob windmill that Dave was just talking about. And at the time it was built in 1979, there was a day dedicated to it called Windmill Day. On July the 11th, the street fair was held in downtown Boone in its honor. But the windmill had to be manually propelled because the winds were only blowing at around 6 miles per hour. So it was, you know, not the most successful windmill day.
So the wind does not always blow and the sun does not always shine.
No.
That's our time for today. I'm Paul Gates. We hope you'll join us next time on The Academics.